Ironically, if you want to change how you are in a situation, in my opinion, it's necessary to embrace what the situation or the person in front of you, what that situation is or who that person is, and not to have rose-colored glasses or difficulty-colored glasses on you so that you can actually be with what is. Once you embrace that situation, even if it's difficult, then you can make changes in yourself and hopefully smooth out that situation or that relationship. So that's what we're going to talk about today, how to do that when it can be so difficult to embrace what is. I'm Wendy Yellen. This is the Art of Transformation. And before we continue, if you haven't already liked and subscribed, please do. It helps so much to reach people just like you who are interested in real change. Thank you. When we're in a situation that challenges us, maybe a situation that makes you sad, like someone you care about suffering, perhaps from illness or suffering emotionally. Or when you're in a situation that challenges you to really lift yourself up, practice what you preach, practice what you believe in, even though it challenges you, it aggravates you, it makes you feel crazy inside. But once you pull yourself up to actually do what some part of you knows is needed here and is in integrity with you, and once you actually allow yourself to be in a situation, not to pretend, not to make things up, not to ignore, not to be in delusion or illusion, then you have a chance at least to make a change and to do something inside yourself or in the situation or with that person that's real and meaningful and loving. But how do you do that? It can be so hard. It can push all the buttons that we have and then some. So let's talk about concretely some specifics, and I hope that you will think about your own situations and come up with some situations and perhaps people that this applies to, and then it'll make more sense to you and it'll be more applicable to you. Perhaps you have a friend that is ill, or a relative or a loved one. And let's say they have cancer or some other life-threatening illness. So I'm thinking about one client, I'll call him Brian, and his brother has cancer, John. My client, Brian, has had a lot of trouble over the years relating to his brother, John. And John aggravates him quite a bit. But he loves his brother. And he's really concerned about the way his brother is relating to the cancer, relating to other people, having trouble letting in help and love. And this triggers Brian, my client Brian, because he really wants to help. He really wants to at least be there for his brother. But at the same time, John is acting in such an aggravating way and is not able to let in help or love. And it makes Brian feel like, why am I bothering? Or like, can't you see that I am trying my best to go to your appointments with you and to listen to you about the doctors and to help you make decisions and to just sit with you about how crummy all of this is? But no, John can't let any of that in. So what is Brian to do? How can Brian be present and there for his brother when his brother's acting like his brother has always acted. And so Brian has a way of reacting to his brother that is definitely not serving him right now, because he wants to be loving towards his brother. He wants to help his brother in whatever way another person can. So Brian doesn't really see his brother for who his brother is. In this case, you could say his brother is aggravating. He pushes other people away. He acts really quickly and doesn't think. And he's very wrapped up in himself. You could say that. That's certainly how Brian is seeing him. But if Brian wants to connect to his brother, if that's all he sees, he won't be able to do it, because Brian himself is getting triggered by the decades of relationships that they've had. So what if Brian wants to be there more for his brother? First, it would be really important to embrace what is. And what is that John has a hard time letting in support. And John gets anxious when he's pushed by a situation, gets kind of crazy, and not only does he not let people in, but he kind of goes at this very, very, very quick pace. That's who John is all the time. And of course, like all people, when he's stressed by something terrible like this, his foibles, if you will, are worse. So what if Brian can take that in? What if Brian can actually see and feel and hear that this is his brother? His brother has a hard time letting people in. His brother gets frantic in the best of times and is now off the charts. His brother has a hard time thinking about other people and appreciating what other people might want to do for him or do for him at the best of times. And at this worst of times, he's that way to the hilt. So what if Brian can see all of this, can take it in? That's who my brother is always, and all of those aspects of him are even worse right now. That would be embracing what is. From that place, Brian now actually has some real choices. Because really loving someone, it doesn't mean that you love them only if they're behaving themselves, or if they're acting right, or if they're letting you in, or if they're acting logically or reasonably. That's not real love. Real love is unconditional, but how do you get to be unconditional? When the person you're trying to love unconditionally and open your heart to is acting like a wild person and triggering you. So what if you just take, if this is anything similar to a situation that you have, and that would probably look like the person isn't acting in a way that it's easy to love them, then pretty much everybody can relate to that. But you want to love them. You really, really want to. How do you do it? Well, first, to recognize, as I said, that this is who they are. The person that you want to love is actually standing in front of you as who they are. Can you actually take them in? To take in another person requires first settling in to yourself so that you're not being bombarded or triggered by what they're doing. So you might just close your eyes if you want to try something, just a little experiment here. Just close your eyes and see them standing in front of you. Don't think about them, but actually see them standing in front of you. And just notice first how you feel when you see them there. My suggestion is that you actually really look and see what you see when you're seeing them. This is an eidetic image when you're seeing them in front of you. What do you see when you look at their face, at their body, at the way they're holding themselves? Before you have the feeling, notice if you can wait and first see in the image, see them. And notice your heart. Does your heart close, clench, cry? What happens to your heart when you actually look at them? Perhaps if you're like Brian, you start to feel really sad because you start to feel the things that you were pushing away before, which is how horribly sad and anxiety-provoking it is to have a brother who you might lose sooner than you thought and in a horrible way. When you start to keep looking, if you start to feel that in your heart, see if you can allow yourself to tolerate that feeling in the image as you're looking at the person. Tolerate it enough to feel yourself. These are not easy emotions. And when you're feeling anxious or really sad or afraid, we can kind of pop up and pop out and try to get more control over the situation by trying to control the person so we don't feel all these feelings. But the feelings are in us and they're actually running the show. So just sit with that for a moment and feel whatever it is you feel. I don't know what your feeling is with your image. This is about 20% of an eidetic image called the walk around that Dr. Akhter Ahsen developed. But for now, I just want you to stay here and see if you can maintain your own self and maintain contact with your heart and your whole self as you're looking at the person. You might need and want to pause this recording so you can have the time that's right for you to do this. What do you see and what do you feel? One of the ways this comes up a lot is in relationships or marriages, partnerships. When you've been with somebody for more than 40 years, like I have, it can be hard to actually see them. You see them all the time. You, quote, know how they're going to respond and react to things. You already know. And so you kind of it can be so easy to not actually take them in. I'm thinking of somebody I worked with that had been with her husband for decades, but they had become ships passing in the night, as she described it, living in the same house, raising children, coordinating, doing things together, but not much connection. And, after you've done that for a few decades, it seems normal. But you are with this person still, and once you start to take in what's actually happening in this partnership or marriage, with this other person, then perhaps it might not feel so okay. Or perhaps you may start to notice that you actually have sadness about it, or you have some longing that's buried quite deep. And it may be scary to feel those feelings because it feels like, well, nothing's ever going to change here. I mean, if it was going to change, it would have changed a long time ago. They are who they are, and I am who I am. But that's not always the case. That's what I find over and over with myself, but also with the people that I work with. Because this is not an unusual situation in a long-term relationship. And as she started to feel more what she wanted, she was able to actually take in and see and be with who her husband actually was, as opposed to the overlay that she put on him in terms of her expectations from all these decades. And she began to enjoy him, really, really enjoy him, till that he's her best friend now. And she misses him when they're apart. This is miraculous, because it wasn't that way for decades, and it could have continued to not be that way for the rest of their lives. So this is a huge gift towards the latter part of their relationship. To do that, though, it was necessary for her to feel what was actually going on inside of her and in her heart, in terms of her longings and her desires. And like I said, really important. That can be scary, because then it feels like, oh no, then I got to get divorced, or we have to be apart. But that's a thought. That's a jumping in assumption. And I would say that's not necessarily true. It's just what you think, and it's what you fear, and it's what you imagine will happen. But I've seen it over and over. I've told the story many times where I had practiced. Now, I don't exaggerate, and so I want you to really hear what I'm going to say. For years, I practiced in my head divorcing my husband. I practiced the conversation over and over and over again. If you think about neural pathways in the brain, that one was a boulevard. And thank goodness I never did it. But it took up so much of my mental space, and I was focused on that all the time, silently inside. And then my actions towards him were not very loving. How could they be when that's what's going on in my own silent head all the time? Although it didn't sound silent to me, it was roaring. As I did the internal work with myself, with Eidetics, and as I began to open up to actually see my husband, and actually, for me, it was particularly to let myself feel anything besides anxiety or a kind of low-level numbness. As I began to feel, I began to have the ability to connect with him rather than this monkey mind thing that was going on in the rehearsal of divorcing him. And so as the mind was able to cool down and relax, then I was able to actually see my husband. And as I said many times, one of the things I realized is that he regularly just starts singing around the house to himself. He's got a really nice voice. And once I heard it, first of all, I think he was singing and I wasn't hearing it before. But once I heard it, and once I didn't have all this layering on top of myself and all this mental stuff going on and all this fear and all this rejection that anything could ever change, it was so sweet. It's so sweet when somebody just spontaneously starts to sing. You imagine that it's out of pleasure, right? I do. And that he's in his own little world, right? And he's singing. It's like a bird singing. It's wonderful. And I wondered, of course, was he always singing and I never heard it before? Or was our relationship so repressive to both of us that he didn't want to sing, even though it's his natural way of being? Maybe it's a little of both. So these are just a few of the things that can happen when you let go of the mental projections that you're putting on people, that they're supposed to be a certain way, or they're wrong, or they're bad. Instead, you actually literally see them, take in that that's who they are, and you have the ability to soften your heart, which is not necessarily simple, but there are some very deep ways to do that are not just lip service to open your heart, because what good would that do? And then to be able to feel the tenderness and the concern too, like it's not all roses, right? When you start to actually feel your connection to other people, then you feel impending loss for all of us. We're all going to die. So you can feel the loss, and you can feel the fear, and you can feel the concerns. You feel everything once you begin to open your heart, and that isn't always easy to do. For me, and if you're like me, I think you'll resonate with this. For me, though, that's the place I want to live. That's the place that's really important to me as a human being. And the work that I do, the eidetic images, has been extremely helpful to me. In other video blogs, I'll work with you more with other images, but this one I wanted you to really hear that there are other pathways available to you if you're willing to let go of the knee-jerk response inside you, pay attention to what's actually happening, and then be able, from that place, to be able to see the other person or the situation, which we didn't talk about situations as much, but I'm sure I'll do that in other videos. All right, that's it for now. I really, really hope that this has been helpful to you in being the person that you came here to be. And I'll see you on the next recording. Bye.